At a small, aging diner tucked between tall buildings in New York City, James spent most of his life on his feet. As a black single father, every shift mattered. He worked double hours, often late into the night, just to make sure his young son never went to bed hungry. The diner smelled of coffee and grilled onions, and the floors creaked with every step. James wore the same calm smile every day, hiding exhaustion behind politeness. Customers rarely noticed the weight he carried, but James carried it proudly, believing honest work was the strongest lesson he could teach his child. James' nights followed a familiar rhythm. He took orders, refilled cups, wiped tables, and apologized even when problems weren't his fault. Tips were unpredictable, but he never complained. Every dollar went toward rent, school supplies, and small joys for his son. Some nights were generous, others painfully quiet. Still, James showed up with respect, knowing his son watched everything he did. To James, dignity mattered more than frustration. He believed that even when life was unfair, character was something no one could take away from him. One cold evening, just before closing, a woman walked into the diner alone. She stood out immediately. Her coat was elegant, her posture confident, and her presence changed the energy of the room. James greeted her warmly and seated her near the window. She studied the menu carefully, then ordered the most expensive items without hesitation. James nodded politely, though he knew such meals often came with high expectations. He served her with extra care, ensuring everything arrived perfectly, just as he did for every customer. Throughout the meal, the woman remained quiet, observing the diner more than her food. James noticed her eyes following him as he worked, watching how he spoke to other customers and how he cleaned tables with precision. She asked few questions, offered no complaints, and barely smiled. James wondered if she was disappointed or simply distant. Still, he checked on her often, refilled her water, and wished her a pleasant evening. For James, professionalism didn't depend on kindness returned. When the woman finished eating, she placed the receipt neatly on the table and stood to leave. James thanked her and wished her a good night. As he cleared the table moments later, he glanced at the receipt and felt his chest tighten. The tip line read 0. His heart sank instantly. He stared at the paper longer than he should have, trying not to take it personally. That tip could have paid for his son's lunch for days. He swallowed his disappointment and reminded himself to stay grateful. James had experienced moments like this before, but each one still hurt. He folded the receipt carefully, telling himself it was just another difficult night. As he lifted the plate to clean the table, something caught his eye. Beneath the plate was a small folded piece of paper. At first he assumed it was trash or a napkin. Then he noticed his name written neatly on the outside. Confused, James paused, his tired hands suddenly steady. He looked around the diner, but the woman was already gone. The door had closed behind her, leaving only the hum of the refrigerator and the sound of distant traffic. James unfolded the note slowly, unsure of what to expect. His thoughts raced, an apology, a complaint, or perhaps nothing important at all. For a brief moment he hesitated, afraid to hope for anything. Life had taught him to brace for disappointment more than surprises. As James read the first line, his breath caught. The words were calm, deliberate, and deeply personal. The note spoke not of food or service, but of observation. The woman wrote about watching how he treated others, how he spoke to elderly customers, and how he never lost patience, even when ignored. She mentioned noticing the picture of his son tucked into his wallet when he paid at the register earlier. James felt his eyes sting as he realized she had. Seen him, truly seen him. The note continued, explaining that sometimes value is hidden beneath expectations, just like the note beneath the plate. She thanked James for his dignity, his work ethic, and his quiet strength. There was no explanation yet, no clear reason for the zero tip, only a message that hinted this night was not what it seemed. James folded the note carefully, his hands trembling. Something told him that this moment was only the beginning of a story far bigger than a diner shift. James stood there for a long time, holding the note close to his chest. The exhaustion of the day faded, replaced by a strange mix of confusion and anticipation. Whatever the woman intended, her words had already changed something inside him. For the first time in weeks, James felt seen not as a waiter, but as a father, a man, and a human being. And deep down, he sensed that the real meaning of the zero tip was yet to be revealed. James took the folded note home that night, unable to focus on anything else. Long after putting his son to bed, he sat at the small kitchen table and reread every word. The message spoke of character, patience, and respect shown when no reward was guaranteed. At the bottom was a name he didn't recognize at first, followed by a short line asking him to come to the diner the next morning before opening hours. James barely slept, his mind torn between disbelief and quiet hope. The next morning, James arrived early, unsure why his heart was pounding so hard. The diner was silent, chairs still upside down on tables. A black luxury car pulled up outside, and the same woman stepped in, dressed simply now, without the sharp elegance of the night before. She greeted James warmly, calling him by name. She explained that she was indeed a billionaire, someone who had everything money could buy, yet struggled to find people whose values were not for sale. She told James that for years she had been quietly visiting restaurants, hotels, and workplaces, observing how people treated others when no one important seemed to be watching. The zero tip was never meant as cruelty, she said, but as a test of integrity. She wanted to see whether James would react with anger, bitterness, or dignity. What he didn't know was that cameras had recorded nothing but his calm professionalism and gentle patience. The woman explained that she had lost her husband years earlier and had raised her own children with strict values. Success, she believed, should never erase humanity. She said James reminded her of her late father, a man who worked endlessly yet never let hardship harden his heart. As she spoke, James felt overwhelmed, unsure how to respond. He had never imagined that his quiet endurance was being measured, let alone admired. She then placed an envelope on the counter, heavier than any tip James had ever received. Inside was a check large enough to clear his debts, secure his son's education, and change his life. James froze, his eyes filling with tears. He tried to refuse, insisting he had only done his job. The woman shook her head gently and told him this was not payment for service, but recognition of character. But the gift did not end there. She offered James a position managing one of her restaurant ventures, with training, benefits, and flexible hours so he could remain present in his son's life. She said she wanted leaders who understood people, not just profit. James felt his knees weaken as years of struggle suddenly lifted. For the first time since becoming a single father, the future felt stable. James accepted with gratitude, his voice breaking as he thanked her. That evening, he hugged his son tighter than ever before. He told him that being kind when life is unfair matters more than anything else. His son listened with wide eyes, not fully understanding, but sensing something important had changed. Months later, James no longer worked behind the counter. He oversaw staff, mentored young workers, and made sure every employee was treated with dignity. He quietly helped single parents, paid for meals when he could, and never forgot where he came from. The billionaire woman remained in touch, proud not of what she gave, but of what she discovered. James kept the original note folded in his wallet as a reminder. It wasn't the money that changed his life, but the moment someone saw his worth beyond a uniform. What began as a zero tip became a lesson that kindness, when tested, can unlock doors no one expects, and every time James served someone now, he did so with the same calm smile, knowing that character always leaves the greatest tip of all.